What happens when a self-made seafood mogul walks into one of his own restaurants and sees his staff being yelled at like they're disposable? Sean Hartley built his seafood chain from a beat-up food truck by the docks when he was 23. He'd gut fish by hand at 4 in the morning, sell shrimp rolls out of the window by 11, and fall asleep on a cooler by midnight. Now he was 47, owned 12 restaurants across the East Coast, and hadn't worked a dinner shift in 5 years. He still remembered every recipe by heart. The problem started with numbers. The Piermont location, restaurant number 6, used to be one of the top-performing stores. But in the last 4 months, customer reviews had dropped, sales were down, and employee turnover was high. Sean had asked his district manager, but all he got back was, "We're short-staffed. It's the market." That didn't sit right with him. So he decided to go in himself. Undercover. He shaved his beard, dyed his salt and pepper hair fully black, wore thick glasses, and swapped his usual watch for a $10 digital one. No one at the Piermont location had met him before. He'd only done video check-ins with the manager. Easy to pass as a new trainee. He called himself Sam, just a guy trying to get a job after being laid off from a warehouse gig. When he walked into the back door of the restaurant at 3 in the afternoon, the kitchen was already hot and chaotic. A tall man in a white button-up and Bluetooth earpiece glanced at him. "You the new guy?" the man asked, not even looking up from his tablet.
"Yeah, Sam.
"Starting today." "Whatever. Go find Patrice. She's the floor lead. Don't screw around." That was Darren, the general manager. Sean had only seen him once in a company Zoom call over a year ago. He found Patrice near the dish pit, wiping her face with a towel. She looked tired but gave him a tired half-smile. "You're with me today. You bust tables, run food, help where needed. Stay out of Darren's way when he's in one of his moods." They got to work. The dinner rush hit at 5, and Sean was shocked at how many tables were packed despite the low reviews. The place had potential, but the energy was heavy. Waiters looked over their shoulders constantly, like waiting for something bad to happen. Sean was wiping down a table when he heard it. "Are you brain dead, or just slow?" Darren's voice echoed from the server station.
"Sean froos."
A young server named Luis stood stiff, holding a tray of drinks. His hand shook slightly as Darren towered over him. "I told you table 12 gets the Pinot first, then the water. How hard is it to follow basic instructions?" I'm sorry, I just thought." "You don't think. You do what I say." "You want me to write you up again?" Sean felt his jaw tighten. Patrice stepped beside him. "That happens a lot," he muttered quietly. "Every other shift," she said under her breath. "We've lost 5 servers in 3 weeks." Later in the kitchen, Sean saw Darren snap at a cook for the fries being too golden. He berated a hostess for not smiling wide enough. He even shoved a plate toward a busser and said, "Are you blind? This needs wiping." But what hit Sean hardest was during closing. Luis was changing out the soda boxes, hands shaking, eyes red. Sean approached him quietly. "Hey, you all right?" Luis nodded quickly. "Yeah, just tired. Just trying to keep this job. I help my mom with rent." Sean didn't sleep well that night. The next day, he was back again. This time, he watched more. He saw Patrice cover 2 sections to help a sick coworker. He saw a dishwasher named Zane fix a broken sink valve with duct tape and a wrench, no complaints. He saw kindness buried under fear. After Darren yelled at a server in front of a table, making the customers visibly uncomfortable, Sean knew he couldn't keep quiet much longer. But he needed to see one more thing. One real breaking point. It came the next evening. A family came in birthday party of 7. The server, a quiet girl named Tasha, was doing her best. But the kitchen was backed up and appetizers were late. When she asked Darren for help, he barked, "Figure it out. You want me to hold your hand too?" She returned to the table, apologizing. The father smiled and said, "You're doing fine, sweetheart." But Darren had overheard. He stormed toward the table, cut in front of Tasha, and said loudly, If you're not happy with the service, you can take your parties somewhere else. The table fell silent. Tasha looked like she'd been slapped in the face. That was it. Sean stepped out from behind the bar, pulled off his glasses, and said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "I own this place." The dining room went dead quiet. Customers stopped mid-bite. A couple in the corner slowly turned their heads. Tasha's face drained of color. Darren looked at Sean like he'd just been slapped. Sean stepped forward, calm but firm. "My name is Sean Hartley. I started this company 24 years ago with a folding table and a cooler full of shrimp. I've watched every one of my restaurants grow, and I've taken pride in the people who make that possible." Darren blinked hard, taking a half step back. "Wait. You said your name was—" "I said what I needed to see how things really ran when no one's watching." Darren's jaw worked like he was trying to find the right lie, but nothing came out. Sean turned to Tasha. "You did nothing wrong. Not last night. Not tonight. You've carried yourself with grace, even when someone in charge didn't." Tasha didn't say anything, but her eyes were wide. She gripped the edge of a chair, steadying herself. Sean looked around the room. "We'll be covering this table's meal. And if anyone here tonight feels they weren't treated with respect, I'll be speaking to each of you personally." A woman near the window gave a small nod. A man in the next booth clapped once before catching himself. Sean turned back to Darren. "Office.
Now."
They walked in silence past the kitchen, where a few cooks stared, frozen mid-prep. Sean caught Patrice's eye. "Close out with the team when the shift ends. I'll talk to everyone after." Inside the cramped office, Darren dropped into the chair behind the desk like it might protect him. Sean didn't sit. "You've been running this store how long?" 18 months, Darren said, eyes darting toward the security monitor screen. "Look, I know what that looked like out there, but honestly, these kids—" "Don't finish that sentence." Darren shut his mouth. Sean leaned against the filing cabinet. "I watched you berate 3 employees yesterday. I saw you ignore help requests. I watched a dishwasher fix a broken sink without a word from you. What do you actually do here, Darren?" "I manage. I keep things moving. I hit targets. This store still makes quota. This store has lost 12 employees in 2 months, Sean cut in. "That's not keeping things moving. That's bleeding talent. And tonight, you made a paying family feel unwelcome. You embarrassed a young woman in front of a dining room. How do you justify that?" "They were going to complain either way. I was just— No. You were aggressive, disrespectful, and completely out of line." Sean pulled a binder off the shelf, flipping open to a printed schedule. "What's your rotation policy?" "Why's Patrice pulling doubles 3 times a week?" "She volunteers. She's dependable." "She's exhausted." "That's not dependability. That's desperation." Darren opened his mouth again, but Sean raised a hand. "You're done here." "What?" "You're terminated. Effective immediately. I'll have HR call you tomorrow. Leave your keys on the desk." Darren stood up fast, face flushed. "You can't just—" "I just did." Sean stepped aside. Darren stared at him for a moment, breathing hard, then slammed the desk drawer shut and stormed out. 10 minutes later, Sean stood in the kitchen, apron off, sleeves rolled up. Every employee was gathered: servers, cooks, bussers, hosts, some leaning against prep tables, others standing stiffly, unsure what to expect. "I owe you all an apology," Sean began. "I should have been here sooner. I trusted the wrong people to speak on your behalf, and that's on me." "No one said a word," he continued, "but I saw what I needed to this week. I saw Patrice covering for 3 people without being asked. I saw Zane fix a plumbing issue with no help. I saw servers handle tension with more professionalism than the person who was supposed to lead them." Luis kept his head down, arms crossed. Tasha leaned slightly against the ice machine, still pale. Sean looked at Patrice. "You've been holding this place together. Starting tomorrow, You're interim GM until we find a permanent replacement or until you decide you want the job full-time. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. We'll increase staff coverage. No more back-to-back doubles unless it's your choice. No more fear walking into work. You'll get the support you need. A line cook near the back raised his hand slowly. Does this mean you're sticking around a while?
Sean nodded.
At least through the next few weeks. I'll be taking late shifts, closing with you, doing what needs doing. Another server spoke up. So you were watching us the whole time. I was working beside you. That's how I knew what was real. Zane scratched his chin. You gonna fix the walk-in too? Keeps icing over. I'll get a tech here by morning. There were a few nods. A few people exchanged glances. No smiles yet, but the tension had shifted. Sean finished. You've been doing your best in a bad situation. That ends now. I expect a lot from my teams, but I'll never expect you to carry it alone. As the staff filtered out to finish closing duties, Patrice stayed back. She leaned against the prep table, arms folded. You meant it? About backing us. Every word. I've managed shifts before, but I've never run a whole store. You've already been doing it. You just didn't have the title. She took a deep breath. You're gonna have to teach me a few things. Sean smiled. We'll go over financials tomorrow. Right now, just get some rest. You've earned it. She gave a small nod, then turned to help the team finish up. Sean walked out to the dining room. The last few customers were leaving, some giving him curious glances, others offering quiet thanks. The birthday family was gone, but their table had been cleared, the candles still faintly warm. He sat down alone, the hum of the soda machine in the background, and pulled out his old notebook, the same one he used to use in the food truck. He jotted down, replace walk-in thermostat, interview Patrice for GM role, staff scheduling audit, new leadership training rollout. He paused, then added, never assume again. See for yourself. Always. The hum of the kitchen continued behind him. For the first time in months, it sounded like something worth listening to. By the following Monday, the Piermont restaurant was quietly bracing for what came next. No corporate memo had gone out. No official announcement had been made beyond the staff meeting. But word travels fast in kitchens, and by the time Sean walked through the back entrance, just before noon, everyone knew he wasn't a trainee anymore. He wore the same plain black polo he'd worn while undercover, but this time without the glasses, dye, or effort to hide who he was. He nodded to the prep cooks as he passed, clipboard in hand, and headed for the office that had been Darren's only days earlier. Patrice was already inside, standing by the whiteboard, checking off inventory figures. She didn't flinch when Sean entered, but she didn't look up either. What's the walk-in status? Sean asked. Tech came at 8, she replied. Condensation issue. He patched the line for now, but we might need a full replacement before next month. Get a quote. We'll run it through procurement. She finally turned toward him. I'm not used to having someone actually say yes when I ask for something. You're going to have to start getting used to a few things. They spent the next hour reviewing shift logs and supply orders. Patrice was sharp, numbers came easily to her, and she remembered specifics without having to double-check. But she was cautious, watching Sean like she was waiting for the catch. It wasn't until they reviewed the last payroll report that she paused. You know Luis? He's been clocking out early to avoid hitting overtime, even when he closes. Sean looked up.
Why?
Because Darren used to threaten to cut his hours if he went over. Said it made him look bad on the metrics. Find out what he's owed. We'll back pay it. Patrice hesitated. You sure? Might cause a stir if people start asking about retro pay. Then let them ask. If there are others, we'll fix it. At 2, the lunch rush started to wind down. The dining room was only half full, and the energy, while still cautious, was less strained. Sean stepped onto the floor, observing quietly. Tasha was handling a two-top near the window, her voice steady and confident. Zane was in the dish pit, methodically working through a stack of trays. Sean made a note to sit with him later. By 3, the place had thinned out. Sean slid into a booth near the back, where Luis was wiping down the condiments and refolding napkins. When he noticed Sean sitting there, he froze. "Got a second?" Sean asked. Luis approached slowly, drying his hands on a towel.
Sure.
Yeah. Sean gestured to the seat across from him. "I looked through the clock records. You've been underreporting hours." Luis nodded once. "I didn't want to cause problems." "You didn't. Someone else did. We're correcting it." He said nothing, but his shoulders eased slightly. Sean continued. "Do you want to stay on here?" Luis looked surprised by the question. "Yeah. I like the people here. I didn't think anyone noticed." Sean leaned forward. "I did. I saw how you handled that soda line when it leaked. You didn't panic, didn't ask for help, you just fixed it. That tells me a lot more than a resume ever could." Luis swallowed hard. "Thanks. That means a lot. You'll get back pay by Friday. And if you ever feel like something isn't right, you come to me or Patrice." No more silence. After Luis left, Sean stood and made his way to the kitchen. A younger line cook named Brooke was prepping a batch of crab cakes, headphones in one ear, moving fast but precise. She hadn't spoken much during the staff meeting, but her station was always clean, and her timing was sharp. "Brooke," Sean said, catching her attention. She pulled out her earbud. "Yes, sir? You trained anywhere before here?" 2 years at a hotel kitchen in Jersey. Got laid off when they cut banquet service during COVID. "You want to learn more about prep management?" She blinked. Yeah. Eventually. Start shadowing the lead prep chef. If you're still interested, in a few weeks, we'll talk about formal training." Her eyes lit up, just for a second, before she nodded and returned to her station. By 5, the dinner crowd had started to roll in. Sean stayed on Expo, calling out plates and helping run food. The kitchen was moving smoother, but the gaps were still there. One of the new hires had called out, leaving the floor short a runner. Patrice jumped in without hesitation, but it wasn't sustainable. Between orders, Sean flagged her down. "We need more bench strength. You have anyone in mind?" She thought for a second. "There's a guy named Marcus who used to work here last year. Left because of Darren. He was solid. Reach out. If he's available, I'll meet him myself." Just after they pushed out a 10-top, Sean noticed a couple standing near the host stand, looking uncertain. The host wasn't at the podium. He walked over. "Evening.
Can I help you?"
The man gave a small smile. "We had a reservation for 6:15. But we're early. We'll seat you now. Give me 1 second." He grabbed 2 menus and walked them to a booth. As they sat down, the woman said, "This place feels different. We used to come here a lot, but stopped a few months ago.
Sean nodded.
We're working on bringing it back to what it used to be." She smiled. "Well, it's already better. Thank you." Back near the kitchen, Sean found Zane finishing up a rack of glassware. "You got a minute?" Zane nodded, drying his hands. "You've been here how long?" "Almost 4 years. Came on during the first summer push." "You ever think about moving out of dish and into maintenance?" Zane raised an eyebrow. "I don't have papers. Can't officially do repairs." Sean looked him in the eye. "You're on payroll. You're protected under our work authorization program. If you want to develop those skills, we'll sponsor the training." Zane stared for a second. "Seriously? You've already been doing the work. Might as well get paid and trained properly." Zane gave a slow nod. "Yeah, I'd like that." As the evening wore on, the pace picked up. A small issue with a double-booked table forced the host to scramble, but Sean stepped in and smoothed it over. Patrice coordinated the floor, like she'd been doing it for years. The atmosphere wasn't perfect, but it was undeniably different, more focused, more respectful. Still tired, but less tense. At closing, Sean stayed behind with Patrice to run the final numbers. As she tallied drawer reports, she paused and spoke without looking up. "Why now?" He glanced up from the laptop. "What do you mean?" "All this. You could have just sent someone else." Fired Darren quietly moved on. Sean leaned back. "Because I forgot what it felt like to stand in a kitchen and sweat with a team. I forgot that the numbers don't tell you who's barely hanging on, or who's giving everything they have just to keep it together." She tapped her pen twice on the counter. "You think they'll trust you? After all that time away?" "They don't need to trust me yet. They just need to see that I show up. Day after day. Same as them." Patrice closed the cash drawer and locked it. "Then you better keep showing up." Sean smiled, tired but resolute. "I will." They exited together through the front, the dining room dark and silent behind them. The air outside was cool, the street quiet. Sean paused by the door, looking back through the glass. Patrice turned to him. "You coming tomorrow?" "Early," he said. "I want to try Zane's duct tape sink trick myself." She gave a quiet laugh and walked off toward her car. Sean stood for another moment, then pulled out his notepad. He added one more line. "Rebuild trust one shift at a time.
No shortcuts. No excuses."
By the end of the second week, the Piermont restaurant was holding together, but only just. Sean had kept his word. He showed up every day before the kitchen lights flicked on, tallying deliveries, reviewing prep sheets, checking under counters and behind coolers. The walk-in still needed replacing, the staff was still stretched thin, and the dining room still had moments of tension. But there was movement, slow, uneven, but real. On Thursday morning, Sean stepped through the back door with a stack of printed onboarding packets tucked under his arm. Patrice was already at the prep table, tying her apron. "2 interviews today," she said without looking up. "Marcus is coming in at 11. And there's a walk-in, name's Vanessa. She used to serve at the Barrage location." Sean set the packets down beside her. "Let's see if they can handle the lunch shift. We'll train on the floor. Sink or swim." She nodded once, then paused, lowering her voice. "You still planning to speak with corporate next week?"
"Already booked," Sean said.
"New policy proposals, leadership training standards, audit protocol. It'll get pushed back, but I'm not asking." By 11:30, Marcus had finished trailing Patrice through the lunch rush. He was faster than most of the servers on the floor, remembered 3 specials without a cheat sheet, and made a point to bus his own tables. When Vanessa arrived 20 minutes later, she jumped in without being asked, helping a runner manage plates for a 6-top. Sean watched from the service alley, arms crossed, silent. After the last plate cleared, he pulled them both aside near the dry storage. "You want the hours, they're yours. But this isn't the same restaurant you left," he said, glancing at Marcus. "You'll be expected to lead by example.
No shortcuts.
No yelling across the floor. No blaming the kitchen when you're behind." Vanessa nodded quickly. "I'm just glad to work somewhere that isn't chaos." Marcus gave a single, steady look. "As long as I'm respected, I'll give everything I've got." "You'll get it," Sean said. "But it's earned both ways." By late afternoon, the floor was smoother. Still lean, but no longer frantic. Sean stayed in the back, reviewing vendor contracts at a folding table near the mop sink. He barely looked up when Zane walked in, wiping his hands on his apron. "There's a leak behind the fryer," Zane said. "Could be the seal on the water line. Shut it down.
Tag it.
We'll move fryer service to the left side until it's fixed." Zane hesitated. "You want me to call it in?" Sean stood, pushing the folder aside.
"No."
"I'll show you how to write the request from the admin portal. You're going to start logging this stuff." Zane followed him to the office, head slightly tilted. "You always this hands-on?" Sean opened the laptop. "I used to be. Then I got comfortable." I'm correcting that. Later that night, just before close, Sean stepped into the dining room to check table 42. The guests had left 20 minutes ago, but the server hadn't cleared it. A server he didn't recognize. He approached the table and saw a half-empty bottle of wine, scattered crumbs, and a crumpled napkin. No bus tub in sight. When he turned around, he spotted the new hire Greg leaning against the back wall near the service station, scrolling through his phone. Sean walked over. Greg. Greg looked up, slow. Yeah. You're on 42. It's been sitting for 20 minutes. Greg shrugged. They didn't tip. Not worth rushing. Sean stared at him. You leave tables dirty, based on gratuity. I'm just saying, they didn't exactly make it easy to care. Sean's voice dropped. I don't care what they tipped. You clear every table like it's your first. Or, it'll be your last. Greg let out a short laugh.
All right, man.
Relax. Sean didn't blink. You're done. Clock out. Greg's eyes narrowed. Wait, seriously? You disrespected the floor, ignored your station, and responded to direct feedback with sarcasm. This isn't negotiable. You're done. Greg stood there for a moment, then scoffed and walked off toward the back without another word. Patrice appeared a minute later, having caught the tail end. You good? I don't tolerate entitlement, Sean said. Not from anyone. She nodded once, then turned to help reset the front tables. The next morning, Sean met with Vanessa in the alley behind the kitchen. She'd stayed late the night before without being asked, helping fold napkins and organize the silverware drawer that had somehow become a war zone of mismatched utensils. I noticed you stayed after your shift, he said. I didn't mind. Place feels better than it did when I left. Sean leaned against the brick wall. You looking for something long-term? Vanessa blinked. Honestly, yeah. I've been bouncing around too much. Feels like every restaurant's just waiting to fall apart. Then let's build one that doesn't. That afternoon, Sean made time to sit with the host, a quiet 19-year-old named Maribel who'd barely spoken since Darren's removal. She'd been moved to part-time after missing a few shifts due to transportation issues, but her notes were always sharp, and she'd memorized the birthday reservations for the entire weekend. You've been solid, Sean said. What's keeping you from picking up more hours? Maribel shifted in her seat. My brother borrows the car for work. We only have one. You live nearby? About a mile and a half. Sean thought for a moment. We're going to cover a rideshare stipend for you. That gets added to your check. No more missed shifts because of a ride. Maribel's eyes went wide for just a second before she nodded. You earned it, he said. We're not here to punish people for doing their best. By the end of the week, the shifts were running tighter. Patrice had reorganized the floor plan to better match server strengths. Vanessa had taken lead on new hire training, and Zane had logged his third successful maintenance report without assistance. But the most important moment came late Friday night. The kitchen was down to 2 cooks, and the line was dragging. One of the platers dropped a tray of oysters, shattering the plate. Brooke, now lead on prep, instinctively stepped in to help, even though her shift had ended 30 minutes earlier. Sean caught her after the last ticket left the window. You didn't have to stay. I couldn't leave it like that. You want to start training on Weekend Expo? She blinked. Really? You've got instincts. Let's sharpen them. She nodded, then reached for her bag. As the team finished wipe downs and locked up, Sean and Patrice stood outside, the streetlights casting long shadows across the sidewalk. You think it'll stick? She asked. It already is. Not everywhere. Not overnight. But enough. She looked toward the quiet dining room. Feels like a different place. It is, he said, because the people running it now actually belong here. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Sean reached into his pocket and pulled out his notebook. He flipped to the last page, tore it out, and handed it to her. What's this? She asked. My original staff code, written on my first night in the truck. I want you to help me rewrite it for the new leadership manual. She unfolded the page, reading the faded ink. Respect the work. Protect your people. Earn your seat. Never raise your voice before raising your standard. Sean looked out at the street. We forgot that somewhere along the way. We're remembering it now. Patrice folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her jacket. Let's make sure no one forgets it again. They turned toward their cars, the restaurant behind them dark but steady. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean emptiness but readiness. The kind that says, we're still here. We're still standing. And things will be different now.